So like I said, just like we have proofs and theorems to prove that triangles were similar, we also have our congruence proof. So if two triangles are congruent, then all of their corresponding blank are blank. What do you think goes there? Okay, angles or what? Sides. I'm just going to put sides here because it's the shorter blank of the two. So the sides are congruent and the corresponding angles are congruent. It doesn't matter what order you put them in. Like I said, just the second blank looks a little longer. Okay, so the next little part, triangles ABC and triangle DEF are congruent. Okay, so I'm going to challenge you guys real quick. I'm going to cover up the image, and I just want you to look up here. Okay, what point or what angle would correspond with B? E. What would correspond with A? C. F. Okay, what would correspond with segment FE or side FE? CB. ED. BA. CA. FD. Okay, so do you realize how that you can make all those statements based off just how the triangles are named? Okay, so obviously here they are. Okay, so I want you to, with your three colors, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. I just recommend it just for the beginning. Okay, highlight the sides that correspond with each other. So AC corresponds with DF. And they don't always line up perfect, so it's not always this, I guess, quote-unquote, like, childish to do. Okay, so real quick, we're going to run through the little exercise. Which angle corresponds with A? D, B, E, C. Okay, corresponds with AB, BC, and AC. Very good. Questions on just basic corresponding parts. Okay, so with every every set of congruent triangles, you could write 6 congruency statements. Okay, so you have 3 congruency statements pertaining to the angles and 3 congruency statements pertaining to the side lengths. So 6 congruency statements. Okay, and another way to write this would just be angle A is congruent to angle D. Angle B is congruent to angle E, and then so on and so forth, and you could go all the way down. So that is what I mean by congruency statements. Okay, for example 1, I want to break out the highlighters again to figure out which side lengths correspond with which. RT corresponds with what? PS. Notice that they're not on the same side this time. TF corresponds with YS or SY, and PY corresponds with RS. Okay, and it wants to know the length of RT. Okay, so we need to set up our proportions. Okay, if I have our equations, what do I know that x equals?
2y minus 4.
2y minus 4. What do I know y plus 5 equals?
3x minus 4 plus 2.
Very good. Okay, so I can either solve a system or just substitute in. What do you want to do? Just substitute. Okay, so everywhere I see an x, I'm going to substitute in 2y minus 4. So I have y plus 5 equals 3 times 2y minus 4 plus 2. Y plus 5 equals 6y minus 12 plus 2. Y plus 5 equals 6y minus 10. Okay, if I add 10 to both sides and subtract y, I get 15 equals 5y. So what does y equal? 3. Okay, now let's go back and substitute in. So I have x equals 2 times 3 minus 4. So what will x equal? 2. Okay, where do you think a common mistake would be made on that problem? Not labeling the sides right. Okay, so I guarantee you on a skills check or a quiz, people will set y plus 5 equal to 2y minus 4 because they look to both be on the left side of the triangle. Okay, make sure you pay attention to that congruency statement. Order matters. Got it? Cool. Questions? Alright, turn the page. Okay, if CAT is congruent to triangle DOG and CA equals 4x minus y, CT equals 3y minus 2, DO equals, okay, so on and so forth, find the value of x and y. Okay, so let's first draw triangles. CAT, and you want to make sure you draw and label in the same order so that your correct sides correspond, because you know that CA has to go with DO, AT has to go with OG, and CT has to go with DG. Okay, then label what you're given. So I have 4x minus y, 3y minus 2, 2x plus 2, and x plus 2y. Okay, what do we have so far? What are my two equations? 4x minus y equals 2x plus 2. And what's my other equation? 3y minus 2 equals x plus 2y. Okay, what do you think the easiest thing to do here would be? How would you solve this if this was a test question? Set all of your, what do you mean? 2 is equal to 2x minus y. Okay.
You could do the second equation, you could like subtract 2y and make it y minus 2 plus x and y minus 2.
That's what I would do. Just to keep it simple. Very good. Subtract, so basically solve one of your equations for a variable. So you could solve the first one for y, or you could solve the second one for x. Okay, it doesn't matter which one you do. Okay, second one would be easier just because you don't have to divide by that negative 1 at the end. So if we do like B said and solve this one for y, or sorry, for x, when you subtract 2y from both sides, you get what? Y minus 2 equals x. And now I can substitute this in for my x values up here. Okay? But before we substitute in, what should we do? To make our lives just a little bit easier. What can I do to this top equation? simplify it. Combine your like terms. Okay, so if I put all the x's on one side, that'll help so that I don't have to substitute in twice. I can just substitute in once. Okay, so if I put my x's to one side, what am I left with? Let's say if I subtract 2x from both sides. 2x minus y equals 2. Now let's substitute in for x because I only have to do it one time. So I have 2 y minus 2 minus y equals 2. Okay, so I have 2y minus 4 minus y equals 2. So I have y equals what? 6. Okay, now go back into your x equation, and what is x going to equal?
4.
Okay, so you will be required to solve systems. Okay, when you have two variables, you need to look for substitution or elimination to solve 2x2 systems. Questions on example 1 or 2, the system. Okay, so you look to solve one variable, then substitute back into your first equation and solve for the second. Questions? Okay. Example 3, write a congruency statement that applies to this figure. Okay, so in order to figure out which sides go with which, how could we do that? How do you know which side corresponds with which in the two triangles? Find the slopes, or not necessarily the slopes, but the length of the sides. Okay, so you're either doing distance formula or Pythagorean theorem, and then the sides that are congruent with one another will be corresponding in the name as well. Okay, so let's find the distance of our sides. Okay, you know that AM is what? 6, and so is BL. And I'm not going to find the exact, I'm just going to find the square root. Okay, so somebody give me a, well first, MG is congruent to what? What did you say? VP. And AM is congruent to VL. And AG, LP or PL. Okay, so when we name it, somebody give me one way.
Triangle AGM.
Very good. Anybody have a different way? You could say GMA is congruent to PVL. You could say VPL is congruent to MGA. As long as everything corresponds. Questions on how to write congruency statements. You will have to do that on your skills check. No? Cool. Okay, so now we're breaking into those congruence theorems. The first one is SSS. What could that possibly stand for? Side, side, side. Okay, so if three sides of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding sides of another triangle, then the triangles have to be congruent. Okay, so looking in example 4, are these triangles congruent?
Yes.
How do you know?
All the sides.
2 sides
only see two. Where's the third?
They share it. So
They share EG, and what property is that?
transitive?
Not transitive. Reflexive.
Okay.
Welcome back to the proof world. We're about to do a bunch of that. Okay, somebody give me a statement.
FGE.
FGE. Very good. Okay, you could also have EFG, EHG. You could have GEH and to GEF. Questions on side? Pretty easy. Okay, what possibly could SAS stand for? Side angle side. Okay, if two sides and the included angle of the triangles are congruent, when they were similar, what word was that? Proportional. Okay, so now we're congruent to the corresponding side and included angle of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent. Okay, so everything with congruence theorems is congruent. Okay, whereas that similar, we had proportional and congruent. Okay, example 5, are these triangles congruent? How? Okay, so they share this angle, and they share a side. So you have side, angle, side. Okay, somebody give me a congruent statement. TUS to WUS, perfect. Ooh, this will, oh, well, I guess if you read the definition, it's not tricky. But HL, hypotenuse, leg. Okay, hypotenuse leg is the only one that just needs two things. All the rest of them are going to need three. Hypotenuse leg is the only one that just needs two. And the reason being is, if you think about Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. If they have the same b and the same c, they have to have the same a. Okay, or if they have the same a and c, they have to have the same b. Okay, in order for that equation to work. That's why you only have to have two things. Okay, so if the hypotenuse and one leg of a right triangle are congruent to the hypotenuse and corresponding leg of another right triangle, then the triangles are congruent. You have to have both pieces. And they'll trick you, though, and sometimes not have that right angle and try to trick you into saying HL. Okay, so make sure it has the right angle in order for you to use HL. Okay, example 5, are these triangles congruent? Yes, because they have the legs, okay, that are congruent, and then they also share that hypotenuse side. So that's where you get the HL. So somebody give me a congruent statement. Very good. Any questions on those three theorems? Because those are the only three we're doing today. Side, angle, side, and HL. Cool. Okay, now we're going to put them into practice and see which theorem is making these triangles congruent, or maybe they're not congruent. We'll figure that out. Okay, so for number 1, you have POR. Okay, and they want to know if it's congruent or not. Okay, we have PO is congruent to what? SO. We have angle POR is congruent to SOR. What else do we know? OR is congruent to ORY. Reflexive. Okay, so I can mark that. Okay, now I have three things that's the most, or minimum that you need, apart from hypotenuse leg. Okay, you need at least 3. Okay, so which theorem is that? Side angle side. And so POR is congruent to what? SOR. Sweet. Okay, number 2. Okay, when you have that right angle, you should immediately start thinking about hypotenuse leg. Okay, we know that TX is congruent to VW. We know that angle V is congruent to angle X. What else?
TW is congruent to TW.
Very good. Oops. So what's our reason? Hypotenuse leg. And what's my congruent statement? TVW is congruent to WXT. Okay, so over here I'm kind of writing little proofs without the reasons, just to kind of get us in a habit. This one? Yes and no. You would have had to prove to me that XW is congruent to VT. TXW and TV. Oh, you're asking if it's side angle side based off what we have right now? Yeah. No, because the shared angle would be these guys. Remember that it has to sandwich the angle, the two corresponding sets of sides, and that one doesn't. It would have to either be this side and this side, or this side and this side, but we were given X. So it would have to have been WTX and TWV in order to do side angle side. Okay. Number 1. Okay, we're again trying to decide whether things are SSS, SAS, or HL. If the triangles cannot be proven congruent, write not possible. And again, same thing with similarity statements. You do not write a congruent statement if they are not congruent. Okay. For number 1, okay, you know that GK is congruent to KM. HK is congruent to LK. What else do you know? Not just angle K.
Angle GKH is congruent to LKM.
Very good. GKH and LKM. Why so? Vertical angles. Okay. So now I have 3 pieces of information. Okay, so that's the minimum that I can have. So, what congruency statement, or what congruency theorem? Side angle side. Oops. So, side angle side. And the angle is sandwiched, and that's why it's side angle side. Okay, what's my congruency statement? HGK is congruent to LMK. Perfect. Okay, if you haven't listened to anything yet, I would make sure I listen to number 2. So again, if you haven't listened to anything yet, I'd make sure I listen to number 2. Okay. We know so far that TU is congruent to WU. What else do we know? SU is equal to SU. Why is that? Okay, what else? TUS is congruent to WUS, and why is that?
Can we have the first letter?
There's multiple ways, so. Could be 2 words, and it could be a P and a B. It could be 1 word and an S. Supplementary or perpendicular bisector. Okay, so you have 2 angles here that are adding up to 180 because they form a straight line. But you also know it's a perpendicular bisector because it forms a right angle and it bisects WT. So I would have gone perpendicular bisector. Okay, so what is the reason that these triangles are congruent? Side angle side. What do you think people are going to put? Hypotenuse leg. Why?
Because of that right angle.
Because there's a right angle. You have to make sure that it gives you a hypotenuse and a leg. Okay, just because it's a right angle doesn't mean it's always going to be HL, but it's something that you should check for. Okay, so that's a trick one. Okay, again, if you haven't listened, I'd make sure I listen so that I prepare for a quiz or a test question that might be very similar. So those of you that are on your phones, I would get off of them. Okay. What are some names for segment SU? Like some of our old-fashioned vocab words. We already said one of them.
Perpendicular bisector.
Okay, so SU acts as a perpendicular bisector. What else is it?
Altitude.
An altitude? What else is it? There's 2 more.
The median?
A median. Why a median? Or what is a median?
I don't know. It's a very good question.
Opposite vertex to the midpoint of another side. Very good. And there's one more.
It's not wrong. Like, it's not wrong.
Okay, maybe this will help you. If these triangles are now congruent, because we've said that, right? So you know that this angle is congruent to this angle, that angle is congruent, and this angle is congruent. Does that help you at all?
No. I don't remember. It's in here. It's not. It's there. But it's not there.
One more.
If she says it, it's like. Oh, is it?
2 words.
It's B.
And bisector is the second. Angle bisector. Okay. So, in your future, okay, you can have a test question that asks you, what does that represent? Or a quiz question on Friday saying, what does that represent? And you have to know all of your vocab.
You need to make an acronym.
That's why I said if you are not paying attention, you need to pay attention now. And it's not about necessarily making an acronym, as it is knowing what those vocabulary words mean. Okay, because they'll switch it up on you. Okay, they'll say a midpoint. They'll say, I don't even know. They won't include all of them. They'll just include 2 of them. Or maybe 3. They might have you write them. Okay, so you need to make sure you're keeping up with all of our past vocab. Okay, so again, SU in this case represents a perpendicular bisector because it forms a right angle and it splits WT. It represents an altitude because it is the height of the triangle. It represents a median because it goes from opposite vertex to midpoint of the opposite sides. And it is an angle bisector because we know that the two triangles are congruent. These two angles, corresponding angles, are congruent, which means that it's being bisected. Okay, so all four of these things are true. So last but not least, give me a congruency statement.
Triangle
SUT is congruent to? Awesome. Okay. Number 3. What do we know? NL is congruent to KM. NK is congruent to LM. And what else do we know? Very good. So, how are they congruent? And somebody give me a congruency statement. K and L is congruent to LM. Sorry. Questions on number 3? Okay, number 4. We know IC is congruent to TK. We know angle what is this? ICT is congruent to TCK. What else do we know? TC is congruent to TC. Are they similar?
Yes.
Why no? You guys need Amber Alerts. They went off all last class. Put your phone on silent. Well, then turn them off. Okay.
Why is it not?
Guys, we still have a lot to do. Okay. Was it Andres? Was it you that said they're not similar?
Oh, I see now.
Very good. The angles in between on triangle TCI to make side angle side, but on this side, it's not. Okay, we have side angle, which we never are. Okay, even though people still cuss at me on their paper, it's okay. Okay, so still, the whole thing still holds true. If you're cussing at me on your paper, it's not right. Okay, so SSA or ASS does not work. Okay, so side angle side here does not work because of triangle TCK. So these would be not congruent. Okay, but we'll try again. And number 5. EA is congruent to AR. EAY is congruent, EAY is congruent to RAY. What else? YA is congruent to YA. What about now?
Yeah.
Very good. So we still have side angle side, side angle side. So somebody give me a congruence statement.
EAY congruent to.
Isn't that like a PlayStation thing?
It is.
Isn't it? EAY Sports. Oh, it's just EA Sports? You can tell I never play video games. Isn't it like in the game? Isn't that how it goes? EA Sports in the game. Don't they say it? Come on, give me some credit. It says it, right? No? Okay. Never mind. Okay, EAY is congruent to what? RAY. It's okay. Coach Cologne failed. It's fine. Okay, number 6. Okay, you know that RN is congruent to AG? You know angle R is congruent to G? Do you know anything else? No. So what is happening? Not congruent. Why? Not enough info. Okay, so even though HL only has 2 to its name, it's technically 3 because you have to have the hypotenuse, the leg, and the right angle. Okay, so you have to have 3 congruency statements in order to even possibly prove something's congruent.
Just because it's like understood and hypotenuse leg.
Well, not necessarily that it's understood, but it's just like marked usually in the image. So that's why it's just hypotenuse leg. But in order to have a hypotenuse, you have to have a right angle. So it's kind of implied. Questions on 1 through 6. This type of setup is very quiz-like. Okay. 7 and 8 are great questions as well for your near future. What additional information would you need to prove the triangle is congruent by HL? Okay, so you need hypotenuse leg here. Okay, so currently you have angle E is congruent to angle D. You have BA is congruent to CA, and what side does that represent? Your hypotenuse. So what are you missing here? You have the right angle, you have the hypotenuse, so you need a leg. Okay, it doesn't necessarily matter which one, you just need to give me a pair of legs. So somebody give me something. EA. EA is congruent to DA, or EB is congruent to DC or CD. Okay, so either 2 answers. You don't have to give me both, but you have to give me one of them. Okay, number 8, we have H is congruent to S, which is our right angle. Then we have GH is congruent to TS, which is our what? The leg. So what piece are we missing? Hypotenuse, which is very good. Alright, ready to tackle these? How many proofs we got? 4.
4.
Woo! They're not bad. None of them are bad. Come on, you guys trusted me last time. They weren't bad. Stop laughing at my EA Sports. I hear you. I don't know which part's more embarrassing, the fact that I made the reference or the fact that I messed it up. It's okay. Or just, yeah, triple threat. Alright. What's going first? Given. So AB, guys, regroup. Is congruent to RC, and AB is parallel to RC. So they're congruent and they're parallel, and it's already marked for you. What nice people. AKA Miss Eckes. Okay, somebody give me something. Ooh, why? Alternate interior angles. I like it. Somebody give me something else. Why? Okay.
AR is congruent to CB.
Pump the brakes. Why?
Just because we have Side.
Very good. Side, angle, side. So you don't need anything else because you have three things marked in your image. You have AC, you have RC and AB, and then you have that angle that we marked congruent. Okay, so we have side, angle, side. Side, angle, side. Okay, so now the last thing that you have to worry about is how you name it and making sure you name it in the correct order. Okay, so give me something. RAC is congruent to BCA. And you're done. Not bad, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Can you just write it like what it says?
Oh yeah, you could have written that. Yeah, we made it a little bit more difficult. Guys, I can't hear her. Right angle. Questions on this page? Cool.
That wasn't too bad.
Only 3 to go.
Yay!
They're all short. This one's 4 steps too. Okay, statement. Reasons. Oh, did I spell wrong? Oh yeah, wow. Okay, number 1 is our given. AD is congruent to CD, and AC is perpendicular to BD. This time, we weren't nice. We didn't mark it. So you can mark it. What does it mean when AC is perpendicular to BD? Forms right angles. So what does that tell you about 1 and 2? Okay, so you need to write that as a step. So angle 1 and angle 2 are right angles. And why are they right angles? Because they are perpendicular. Definition of perpendicular. Okay, so now you know that they're equal to each other. Because why? Definition of right angles. Sorry, this is 5 steps I like. Okay, what else do we know? BD is congruent to BD, and why is that? Oops. Oh my gosh, I did it twice. Okay. What do we have so far? Not side angle side, because is that angle sandwiched? Is it HL? Very good. HL. So for step 5, I kind of ran out of room because I messed up. But step 5, you just would write your congruency statement. Triangle ABD is congruent to triangle CBD. And the reason would be HL, Congruence Theorem, or just HL, doesn't matter. Okay, so again, the common mistake for HL is side angle side. If your angle is not being sandwiched, it is not side angle side. It has to be the angle in between your corresponding sides. Okay, so here you shared the leg, and then you have congruent hypotenuse, sides. Yeah, that one. Okay. 11. Statement. 2 more. Hang in there. Reasons. PS is congruent to RS, and ST P bisects RSP. So PS congruent to SR, and if ST bisects RSP, what does that tell you? 1 and 2 are congruent, and what would be your reason? Definition of? Very good. Okay, what else? ST is congruent to ST. Why is that? Reflexive. Then what? SAS. So once you have 3 things marked on your photo, that's when you're starting to look to see if you have any theorems. Questions on 11?
Do you need to write out the whole, like,
This part?
theorem?
No.
No.
I just, technically yes, but because I know what unit we're on, no, because there's also side-angle side similarity theorems. So, if like a non-LTHS person looked at your paper, they wouldn't necessarily know.
Will Bruce be on star?
There's not a star for,
EOC.
there's not an EOC for geometry.
Oh.
Well, that rhymes.
Really? Oh, boy. Wow.
But this unit is heavy in proofs. You've got it on your quiz, you've got it on your test, you've got it on skills checks. So kind of get used to them. Last one. Statements. This one has 5. Reasons. Okay, C is the midpoint of BE and AD. Okay, C is the midpoint of BE and AD. Tell me some things.
Angle BCA is congruent to ECD.
Cool. Why?
Vertical angle.
Okay. Now going back to our given, what does that given tell us? C is the midpoint of BE. What does that tell you? BC is congruent to CE. Why is that? Definition of midpoint. Okay. C is also the midpoint of AD. So what does that tell you? For what reason? Very good. Same thing.
Would you have to do that in 2 different steps?
No.
Like lump it in one?
You can lump it in one. Okay, now what? Side angle side. All done, right? Is there a back? That's what she was just asking. So there's SAS similarity and there's SAS congruent. So, I mean, I wouldn't count it wrong, but technically if somebody, not myself, were looking at this, they wouldn't know what you were talking about. Okay, so what 3 did we learn about today? Side angle side, side, and hypotenuse leg. What's something important with side angle side that you have to keep in mind? The angle has to be sandwiched. It cannot be angle side. Okay? What about HL? What's something to remember?
It must be a right angle.
needs to be a right angle. You have to have a hypotenuse and you have to have a leg. So even though there's only 2 to its name, you have to have all 3 parts. Say they gave you a leg and a hypotenuse but no right angle, it'd be wrong. Okay, you want to have enough information to prove it congruent. Okay, that right angle has to be there and the other 2 parts. Questions? Alright, you have the rest of the time